This is a really large section that I've just squashed together really because if you read a good quality newspaper or you look at the BBC website, I know it's very close to your exam, but if you have a little look tomorrow, you'll be able to spot these features. And it's really the key to this area is good analysis skills. So explaining why it would affect the business, in what way it would affect the business, in negative or positive, explaining why it's negative or positive, and then maybe adding in some evaluative features. So, does it would it always be positive or negative? Is it negative to all of the stakeholders? Do some stakeholders benefit from it? Does it depend upon anything? And the effects in the short term, are they in the long term? And those types of factors. So, I've prepared a slide already on this one, and I think all of those things I've just mentioned are relevant. So let's just have a look through it in order. So political factors. I've not got anything on this slide because the best thing to do when we're looking at political factors is I should have one that I've pre-prepared. Let me see if I can make this frame a little bit. No, I can't make my frame, but here we go. I've got the BBC News website up, and if you go to the politics section, you get a lot of information on politics, obviously, but there's some stuff that maybe isn't so relevant here. New Sol Campbell, but EU vote. The referendum that the Conservative government are planning to hold about whether we should be in the EU is quite interesting. It definitely has a large impact on business in the UK. New powers for Scotland, so maybe businesses that are located there, legislation changing, all of those types of things. We've got an economic factor there. And this was from what was her name? She's on I think Strictly Come Dancing, well, anyway, I'm getting distracted. But new legislations with children's outfits. So these play outfits are not classed as clothes; they're classed as like a toy. And so previously they've not been eligible for or had to follow the rules in terms of kind of flammable materials. So they're made out of a lot of artificial fibres, so they're very, very flammable. And Claudia Winkleman, that's her name, but her daughter unfortunately was playing at Halloween, and she was near a naked flame, and her outfit went up in flames, and very, very sad. She's she didn't die. She's alive, but I think she was badly hurt by this. So Claudia's campaigning for a change in the law for these things, but that would affect a business that sells those types of products. So economic. I've done a slide on or a presentation on each of these factors really, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but unemployment can affect the business, inflation affects the business, exchange rate, importing, exporting, the economic cycle. Here's Mark Carney from the Bank of England, that's to represent monetary policy, so interest rate changes. And we've got George Osborne here with the budget policy, so that represents government spending and government taxation as well, so that can have an impact on the business. Social factors, changing social factors, these might be changing tastes and fashions, social networking and all those types of things, but it might be just attitudes to what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. So this is quite a recent news story. This is the Toys Like Me campaign, and this was started, I think it was a mother of a child who has a disability, and she wanted to see more toys on the market that represent just the general diversity in our community. So that being people with disabilities, so people in wheelchairs, and we've got people here with guide dogs as well, so presumably representing blind people, but all sorts of disabilities represented. And she formed this pressure group, and it got quite a lot of press, and I certainly signed a petition about it, and it actually got I think it's Playmobil, the children's toy company, to change some of their strategies. So they're bringing out toys now who are going to be representing people with disabilities. You know, it's a good point when we come on to pressure groups that they're not necessarily something that's going to cause all these problems for businesses. I think this business, Playmobil, has come out of this looking quite positive, really. And usually when I sign these types of petitions, it takes a long time for change to happen, but they were pretty quick on it. And I think, yeah, good company, yeah, good ethical company. Technological change, I find this cartoon really funny, but technological change can affect the market, can affect the types of products that you need to sell, but also the processes, the internal running of the business and the operations. Legislation, laws have a big impact on the business. Here are just a few. I'm just going to click through these. I'm not going to read them out for you, but I've picked these out because I think they're really useful ones for consumers to know about as well. I'm actually always quoting this to businesses that annoy me. The sales, I'm like, you're contravening the Sales of Good Act that states that it has to be fit for purpose and as described. Usually when you say that, businesses are a little bit nicer to you actually. But you can have a read through these, maybe pause the video if you want to have a look at these. But there's some great points that you can put in and answer, especially when we're thinking about Unit 4 as well for the 20 mark question. Environmental impacts next then. Let me scroll down. Here we go. So a few things. This is really economics, but it's not just environmental factors, negative externalities, but very often comes into it. So a negative externality is when there's a cost to a third party, and a third party is somebody who is not involved in the decision-making process. So they're not the consumer, and they're not the producer, so they're not the business, they're not the buyer. But they've been affected by the actions, and they've been affected in a negative way, as the name suggests, negative. So private costs are just where it's the cost of production or it's the cost of the consumer of purchasing the product. But negative externality is where there is an external cost. So an external cost is anything that's borne by or incurred by the third party. So say for example somebody is walking down the street and they're smoking a cigarette. So you have that cost to the person actually smoking the cigarette. They've had to purchase them, so that's a cost, but also it's going to have an effect on their own health. But that's a private cost. That person consuming it has made that decision for themselves. However, somebody walking by and being affected by the passive smoke, they haven't asked to have that happen to them. So that's an external cost put onto them, a third party, someone who's not been involved in that decision-making process. And so when we're looking at costs, economic costs, we look at the social costs. So that's the total cost of the activity. Whereas often when we're consumers or we're producers and we're thinking about whether to carry out an action or not, we're only thinking about the private costs. But there's actually, there's the cost to other people as well. So this might be air pollution, so increased cases of asthma and respiratory problems. It could be water pollution for local communities, visual pollution, but also like the destruction of natural habitat for fish and maybe leading to them getting ill and dying. Congestion and noise. That always surprises me, that photo. Gosh, so close to that plane. And here, this is not in the UK, but very congested roads. And it really slows down everybody's journey. And when you've got that stop-start traffic, cars emit more pollution because of that stop-start nature. Destruction of natural habitat. Here we've got some logging. You get soil erosion and destruction of it's basically homes for the wildlife that live in those trees. And also waste disposal. Here we have a picture of it looks like a recycling plant, but we've got landfill and things like that. So visual pollution, maybe even a pest disturbance to the local area. I imagine those places attract a lot of rats and things like that. So you probably, for this section, know a lot about it already. The political section you might not be as aware of, so just BBC website, that section. And remember, for Unit 3, it's very often a business that's not just based in the UK, they're based worldwide. So a little bit of knowledge about what's going on in the world at the moment might help you a little bit. So have a look at the BBC website tomorrow, see what you can find.